Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today, especially joined by my good friend and former colleague, Mitch Glazier, for our fireside chat, where we will be discussing the huge role that the film and music industry have within the broader creative ecosystem. I am Karyn Temple, and I am the Senior Executive Vice President and General Counsel of the Motion Picture Association, which is the leading voice and advocate of the film, television, and streaming industry around the globe. I previously served as the United States Register of Copyrights, where I worked for 9 years. And now I'll turn it over to my good friend, Mitch Glazier, to introduce himself briefly as well.
Karyn, good to see you. Always good to be with you. I wish we were actually at a fireside right now. We'll have to make do. My name is Mitch Glazier. I'm the CEO of the Recording Industry Association of America. We represent the global music entertainment companies. And we work hand in glove with the Motion Picture Association on a ton of issues. And if there's one thing we've learned in the policy world, is that even in what we do, there's an ecosystem, right, between the copyright industries to figure out how we can work together to achieve common goals. And so we've been talking over the past few weeks about how the copyright industries really are an ecosystem. I mean, we all have our own worlds, but we also have these worlds that depend on each other in order to produce great talent and to actually support production in a way that adds to our culture. And so, Karyn, maybe you can start out by just telling us within the motion picture industry how that process works a little bit. Give us a little insight into your ecosystem.
Yeah, great. I think you described that really well, Mitch. First, I would say let's take a step back and, everyone can picture their local hair salon or restaurant or even their local electrician or contractor. Now, expand that picture to each locality around the country. You'll end up picturing thousands upon thousands of small businesses, entrepreneurs, and workers of all levels. But when you think about it, that picture really mirrors the ecosystem we're working within the film and television industry. It's an ecosystem that has many, many more layers than just that top layer of celebrity actors you see in front of the camera. It's a much richer, I would say, and more vibrant landscape, even more so behind the camera. In fact, the film, television, and streaming industry support over 2 million jobs across all 50 states. So it's not just kind of local to Hollywood. These jobs are comprised of over 90,000 small businesses. And here I'm talking about businesses that are employing 10 people or less. And every single one of those businesses and workers supports the creation and production of film and television. And they are doing so in a really essential way. In terms of trying to bring about the story of the television or the film that's going to be online or streaming into your homes, from the concept or idea to the actual screen in your homes. So the vast majority of workers in our industry serve in what we call below the line jobs, production crews and support services like transport or security, catering, and cinema staff. They're basically part of the fabric of our country's economy, supporting their families and also the industry as a whole. So if you've ever been on set, even briefly, I think you could get a bird's eye view of these mini ecosystems, and you can literally feel the energy. You'll see caterers delivering meals, stylists and makeup artists working on their clients, set designers and crew building and painting and decorating, all contributing to the smooth and successful production of that final product that you might see on TV. So when we think of American ingenuity and creativity and our own economic prowess as a nation, I think we should be proud of the creative community and the jobs that we create as a fundamental aspect of that very prowess. Workers in film and television production, for example, they earn on average more than $100,000 per year. That is more than 70% more than the average American worker. And most of these jobs don't actually even require a 4-year college degree. So when you talk about, the issue of full employment and making sure that everyone has a path to the middle class or building the economy back better, it really is worth remembering how important the creative economy is in driving those high quality jobs for our workers. Now, I would say, of course, even with all of that success, there are still aspects of the industry that aren't quite where we'd like them to be. The film and television industry has a long way to go when it comes to ensuring that our workforce and our stories really reflect the diversity and richness of the American public. And so we do have, more to do in that area. We, however, have made some important strides, and I am proud of what we're doing at the MPA. But again, that is an issue that does require us to focus on it more significantly and pay attention so that we can ensure that the economic prosperity that I was discussing really does reach far and wide. So I would say that's a quick overview of the film, television, and streaming ecosystem. And I know that there are a lot of parallels to the music industry. And I think in a lot of ways, we are deeply connected, as you mentioned, Mitch. I'm thinking recently of this just past Sunday at the Oscars, where there were awards for the best score and best song. So I would throw it back to you, Mitch, to tell us about the music ecosystem and how that might be similar or different than the film, television, and streaming ecosystem that I just described.
Yeah, you raised two really good points, which is that whenever you see a project or a story to life and you see that finished product, it's pretty easy to forget everybody who had to participate along the way to get there and how much investment and cooperation went in the back end. And then the second point you made is that it's consistently evolving, the types of stories that we're telling, who's telling them. And both of those are really important. In the music world, just like in the movie world, it's easy to think just about sort of the actor or the artist. But it starts with a lot of investment and a lot of risk taking and a lot of discovery. And then, within the music world, once you pair the record company with the artist, right? And that fit is put together to try and develop and create that artist and that, that story. Then you have the actual making of the record. So it's the session musician and the background vocalist and the producer and the audio engineer and all of those creative minds, each has its own sort of ecosystem on its own. And each of those workers has to come together in a studio or using other tools that are available now to create this magic that's going to be this recording. And you have to pair them with the right songwriter, right? It's like a script and then a movie, right? It has to flow together so that the recording makes that song come to life. And then you have a whole team that has to market that and promote it and work on the artist's, image, publicity, and fan engagement, and helps to get that story out there so that it can connect with people. And then you have to work with all the distribution services to make sure that whether or not it's a, streaming company or satellite radio or, a new app, that fans have an ability to get engaged in a way that's still going to connect them to that story. And so indie record companies, major record companies, all of the people involved on the creative side have to come together to sort of strike gold and make this magic occur in a way that still makes economic sense for everybody. So it is a very, very hard thing to do. But when it happens, it's probably one of the most important contributions to our economy because it also contributes to our culture.
Yeah.
I often ask policymakers, what song played at your wedding? Or what was the song that you first heard when you brought your child home? And those memories in your life create these milestones. So it's so much more, it's so important to the economy, but it's so much more than that. And within movies and music, I would say, try watching a movie without music, right? It just doesn't work. Trying to find your favorite artist and not having an audio-visual component, right? It just doesn't work. I think that the creative sectors are becoming more interdependent. There's more of a mix between film and music than there's ever been. Everything from biopics to, incredible documentaries to music videos to fan engagement through, TikTok. So, from short form to long form, audiovisual works and music are more integrated than ever. And I think we're going to see even more innovation and more creativity going forward. So you talked a little bit about sort of the economic piece and all of the workers behind the scenes. Maybe we can talk a little bit now about how things actually get funded. Who brings this to the table? And it's one thing to have all these great creators out there, but it takes investment and money to make it work. How does that happen in the movie world?
Well, that's a great question, and it's really good to focus on how do we make it all happen? How is that magic that you discussed and described a little bit happen in the film industry? And I will say, in terms of financing, individual studios have different ways of actually financing individual movies. Some might self-finance, others might work with a group of investors. But one thing I think that it's really important to make clear is that there is one common, I think factor, regardless of the way that you individually might finance a film, and that is the reliance on the IP system, as a focus, as a critical part, the key driver, so to speak, for the creative economy. We copyright lawyers like to say that, as the Supreme Court has said, that the copyright is the engine of free expression. So the IP system, it's just foundational to every aspect of our industry, from getting a project off the ground to protecting, that content once that project is, already made. Copyright establishes a framework for creators to actually see that return on their investment. And the reason they need to do that is so that they can continue to create and to make those great films and TV series that we all enjoy. So, to make it even more specific, for example, a studio will spend 100, 200, or sometimes even $300 million on a single film. But what a lot of people don't know is that the vast majority of television shows and films never actually recoup that initial investment. So studios often have to rely on some of their, blockbuster tentpole films and what we call that long tail of copyright to actually be able to fund the more risky investments, those less popular or slightly more controversial projects that are often more culturally impactful to our communities. And so another aspect, I think, in terms of the financing is, how we actually have to pay for the development of those films. All of our costs in the film industry are actually paid upfront. Again, that investment comes at the outset of the production. So we have to pay the people working on our sets, the caterers that I mentioned before, preparing the food, reimbursements to local businesses to shut down their streets so that you can film for a day, or fees and permits to local jurisdictions. And that actually does really make a difference to the local jurisdictions, again, that I referenced earlier. In fact, filming on location pumps approximately $250,000 per day into a local economy. And that's separate and apart from the wages and salaries that the individual workers might have. But all that investment, again, it goes before a studio has any idea whether the film will actually be a hit or whether it will make its money back. So copyright, as I said, it is that critical linchpin. It is how the film industry and all creators really are able to ensure that they can make back some of that investment that they put in and then use that to continue to create. And I think, you can't talk about the economic side of copyright and creativity in the film industry without focusing, of course, on the flip side. And that's the aspect of copyright that, is difficult to control. And that is the piracy issue that, now we see more and more, especially with respect to online piracy. So, that is something that really has affected the economic, I think, model for creators and for the industry? How do you continue to, again, recoup your investment when you're faced with people who are stealing your works online and providing them for free and not giving back to your investment or helping to pay for all of the different resources that you had to develop in order to get a film, across the finish line? We know that streaming piracy, for example, alone cost the U.S. economy at least 230,000 jobs and more than $29.2 billion annually, according to some studies. It obviously, online piracy negatively impacts the film industry, but really the entertainment industry as a whole. And it's a significant threat, as I mentioned, to all existing and even future business models, those distribution models that we don't yet know about. So ensuring that we have, I think, the legal distribution models and that they can thrive in the face of widespread piracy, so that we have, again, that mini ecosystem that is continuing to give back, and that investment that is continuing to be able to be reinvested for additional creative works. I think that is something that we really, sometimes don't focus on when we're talking about the economic side of creativity in the industry, but it's a critical aspect, that ensuring that, again, all that investment is not going to be lost just by the push of the button when somebody steals something and it makes it available online so it can't be legally distributed effectively.
Yeah, so, it's hard enough to invest in making creative works that contribute to the culture, right? Because, as you said, as a percentage, even though you would never sign an artist who you didn't think was going to make it, you would never make a movie that you didn't think was going to be a success. At the end of the day, getting that traction, appealing to that audience and making it a success, it, by its nature, it requires a lot of upfront investment, where those that make it, as you said, have to fund those that don't, no matter how much work you put in. And I think that when people think about piracy, they're not thinking about that system. And I think you're right that if you don't, strong IP rights sounds like such a boring lawyerly thing. And I'm all for the lawyers, of course. But imagine going to somebody and saying, "Oh, I want you to invest in my film." Oh, it's not protected.
Right,
so,
exactly.
You can enforce your rights, so anybody will be able to take it and you'll never make your money back.
Right, exactly.
Please give me money.
Right.
It's sort of a ridiculous construct when you just think about it, but that's the essence of strong copyright. That's the essence of IP law. It's so that you can create that incentive to get the investment, because it's hard to make a movie. It is hard to make a great record. It takes so many people within each of those ecosystems and those ecosystems together to do it. And it's all reliant on strong IP rights. And so, it sounds so sort of scholarly, but at the end of the day, like, the first question they're going to ask you on Shark Tank is, do you have a patent, right? It's the same thing. If you're trying to get people to invest in what you're doing, and you want resources there for actors and for artists and for gaffers and all those funny names like Grips or whatever
right.
on the bottom of the credits, these are people's livelihoods, and they depend on investment, which depends on strong IP rights. And I wish people would think about it that way. I wish people would think about, all of the sort of dominoes that fall when you don't have strong IP protection. And the United States is known for its incredible creative works, right? Like, we have the best movies, we have the best music, we have the most opportunity, we provide the most investment. And 100% of that is because we have had strong IP enforcement. And when you whittle that away, because it's really easy to access on the internet, you're losing that $300 million blockbuster movie, or you're losing that connection with that awesome artist that you love. So I do hope that, throughout this conference and throughout sort of the dialogue that goes forward, I really do hope that people just do what you said, take a step back, think about why, IP rights are so important. Think about all the ecosystems that depend on it, and ask yourselves, do we want to have this kind of entertainment available? And thank God during COVID, we had
Right.
all of the great content that we had in order to sort of, keep us sane. But that doesn't happen by magic, right? It only happens because you have these incredible people working in all these different industries and ecosystems that come together around the country, all dependent on that one thing, which you were the vanguard of when you were the Register, and that is strong copyright rights. So anyway, I'm going to stop preaching now, but it really is important, and I'm glad that we have a minute to talk about it.
Exactly.
All right. Well, maybe I think to sort of finish up here, we can talk about sort of the connection between, the U.S. and internationally, how important it is to kind of fight for IP protection, not just here in our country, but around the world, not only because we make films all around the world and we make music all around the world, but also because we need to protect US, movies and US music from, weak rights, because we are a global industry. We impact culture all over the world. And we have this great, trade surplus where American, movies and music are wanted everywhere. And yet we can't do that. We can't provide this incredible great content if we don't have worldwide protection. So maybe we just ought to end with sort of that connection between the US and what's happening globally.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, when we think about the U.S. exports, as you said, and our trade balances, and you think about the creative economy and the fact that we are able to not only, make a significant amount of economic benefit from our creative exports, but also just the cultural benefit in terms of exporting, the cultural of America outside of the American, boundaries, to really have people be able to get a sense of, our communities. You really realize how important it is to have that global framework. And I think that is why more recently you've seen a lot of more specific focus in terms of making sure that there are international standards, where you have strong protections of IP, because you realize that, yes, you might have very strong protections in the United States, the ability to protect your content and protect your works, but that that's not going to be the only place that you're going to want your films to be distributed or and shown on in movie theaters or in people's homes. You want to be able to get those films and TV series into the homes of people around the world. And the only way you can make sure that you can do that is if you have those strong protections, not only in the United States, but also overseas as well. Because as we know, copyright there's no such thing, as international copyright. There's not one standard. You have to deal with the various laws in each individual country. And so it's just critical for our industry and our economy that those laws, not only in the United States, but wherever we might want to distribute our creativity, are also strong enough to protect that content overseas.
Yeah, the internet doesn't have any borders, but
exactly.
And so, you don't want to, you want to make it really difficult to find safe havens, in certain places where pirates can go and, incorporate and host their servers, and it can cause incredible damage to, investment in the US and globally for storytellers. And so treaties can help, international standards can help, but a lot of times we have to be vigilant in asking our government to say to those with whom they work on lots of other priorities, look, it can't be at the expense of American entertainment industries. We have got to have a fair system where you're going to protect us as much as we protect you. And so that's another key part, I think, is, in our bilateral relationships, whether it's the United States Trade Representative, the State Department, the Commerce Department, basically saying, you have to have an obligation to protect American content, because otherwise we're just not going to be able to get it out there. And, I think the world's a lot better off for the American creative industries. I think we have a lot to be proud of, even though it is still evolving and it is still changing and it's getting better all the time. And we have to have that investment to be able to do that. So
yeah, and I would just add in there, I think we talked about the economic prosperity in the United States from the creative industries. I mean, you can also, and I think it's sometimes important to talk to, other countries around the world, that there is an economic boom that can take place as well. Again,
yes,
a lot of film studios are now making films overseas, and so there's money going back to that local economy. You have artists overseas who also want to be able to make a living from their own artistry and their own creativity. So it is not just big companies in the United States going overseas and making money and kind of keeping it selfishly to ourselves, but it actually is, I think when you have that global standard, high standard for IP, it also helps that local country, just in the kind of the same way we talked about it, helping that local individual state or city when there's a mini ecosystem of a film being produced somewhere. That's the same thing when we go overseas. So again, I think it is a symbiotic relationship in some sense, and it's an important relationship to that you can have that give and take, and both people or sides can actually get some value out of it. So both the United States entrepreneurs as well as the local employers and workers there as well.
It's true. It's a win-win. Strong copyright lifts all boats, and we do so much domestic music that is done in France is incredibly important to French national identity.
Exactly.
Japan, same in China, same in in Italy, right? The music that helps define your culture and your national identity a lot of times is music that is produced in your language, in your country, and that requires investment as well. And so the standards apply across the board. Everybody benefits when there's strong copyright protection all around the globe. And as we move forward with new types of investment, where songwriters are selling their catalogs, and you're creating sort of secondary and even tertiary markets around it, which brings in even more investment, right? It all builds on itself. And then that allows us to have capitalization to have an evolving industry that can tackle tough issues and tell stories that need to be told and connect with fans and, sort of add to that sort of cultural milieu. So let's face it, we're right about everything.
Exactly.
Everybody just listen to us, Karyn. The world will be a great place, but it was really, really awesome to do this. Next time, I hope it's actually next to a fire in person.
Exactly. But it's been a great time. Always love chatting to you. Hopefully we weren't preaching too much to the choir by preaching to each other. But I think that these are all great, great important points for folks to think about, especially during World IP Day, and just the importance, and the focus on, small businesses. That's always, I think, something that's sometimes gets missed, and it's great to be able to highlight that aspect of our creative ecosystem.
True. Well, thank you, GIPC. Hope everybody's doing great, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.